Hello there. So how are you going to charge your electric car? The truth is, you won't need to. So you want an electric car, but you're wondering where all those charging points are going to be placed. Well, the truth is, you won't need a charging point. But why not? Well, that's because you won't be owning an electric car. And the reason for that is not because the government has decided to change its mind to let you keep your old petrol or diesel guzzler, but because general car ownership will no longer be a concept. That's right, you won't need a charging point or a garage. You might want a new bike shed though. Except for the ultra-powerful and wealthy, of course, they'll have all the cars they need. For the rest of us, as part of the you will rent everything and be happy new normal, in future you'll be relying on something called shared mobility. Shared mobility, no doubt, reliant on how up-to-date your health pass is. Now, as far back as 2017, the House of Commons Science and Technology Committee was saying that continued individual car ownership would be unsustainable. And why would that be? Surely the move from fossil fuels to electric cars would make them sustainable? Well, no. According to the experts, just constructing the cars, whether electric or not, on a massive enough scale for worldwide personal usage would be ecologically unsustainable. And now we have a junior transport minister, Trudy Harrison, paving the way for our new normal of shared mobility. She was talking to a sustainability conference held by the shared transport charity Como UK and told them that car ownership was basically a 20th century fad and that vehicle sharing is the way ahead. Well, for the little people anyway, I reckon. According to her, we are reaching a tipping point where shared mobility in the form of car clubs, scooters and bike shares will soon be a realistic option for many of us to get around. And pointing to our pride and joys sat in the driveway, she also said, in the short and medium term, we need to give people alternatives to private vehicles, especially cars. Now, individual car ownership inevitably means many journeys are undertaken with just the driver in the car, however big it is. In fact, 62% of journeys are sole occupancy trips. So the government has committed to increasing car occupancy per journey in the coming years. But that would be something they would need to force on us, because sharing journeys means sacrificing our independence. Anyway, Trudy Harrison wants to see a departure from 20th century thinking centred around private vehicle ownership and towards greater flexibility with personal choice and low carbon shared transport. How can robbing people of their own safe and ready transport be giving them flexibility and personal choice? It's anything but, and it won't. It will put people in a queue when they want to go shopping or to the doctors. All our important appointments will rely on other people or public transport when it works. Now, the first push will be to get people to share their own car space with others, with road lanes being set aside for multiple occupancy cars only. That way, those alone in their own car will be facing huge queues artificially generated for the purpose of slowing you down and getting you out of your car. But given her words I quoted earlier about, in the short and medium term we need to give people alternatives to private vehicles, especially cars, I take that to mean that we will be using an app to call a car that will go around picking up passengers to fill it up, then drop us off at our destinations. Or more likely a fleet of vehicles constantly on the move picking up people and dropping them off, and then we all sit there while the replacement passenger arrives so we can make further progress, with some central computer dictating the route. a recipe for disaster and much frustration and anger. As well as all that shopping to deal with as people are dropped off and collected. Or will all that be delivered in future by putting more delivery vehicles on the road? And can you imagine booking your journey for it not to turn up because there's a defect or it got diverted to a more important task? Either that or we all go back to the 1950s and 1960s by getting everyone to walk in the rain to their local bus stops or train stations. And all the while the rich and powerful will somehow always have a car available. And because they've got a chauffeur, they can use the multiple occupancy fast lane. Anyway, as far as I can see, personal car ownership will be phased out over time, taking with it a fair proportion of your personal freedom to travel and move about as you wish. And as I alluded to earlier, as this would all be electronically controlled, with the state able to impose limits on your movements based on your perceived risk to others via your health pass. Now it seems that these e-scooter things are going to be made legal on the roads to help ease congestion. So that will really help Granny with her weekly shopping, won't it? Or the new mother with her pram and baby paraphernalia. But it will help the young zip up and down the pavements. Now the Minister, Trudy Harrison, who is also Parliamentary Private Secretary to Boris Johnson, so presumably has his ear and is close to government and carries thinking, she also said, changing the way people consider car ownership and dependency will take time. No sugar Sherlock. As well as, many things seem far-fetched until they aren't, and I believe the same is true for shared mobility. Far-fetched? It sounds nutty to me. This would do nothing for social mobility, and it would also damage the jobs market quite substantially, I would think, as people would find commuting just became twice as time-consuming. Walking to the bus stop, waiting to be taken to London, for example, on a crowded bus, stopping every couple of miles to pick up more people. No choice of timing. While the Transport Minister whips past in her ministerial car in the fast lane, followed by the rich banker in his chauffeur-driven Rolls, no doubt. Now I've done the London Tube commute thing in the past. Horrendous, even 20 years ago. A 26-mile journey twice a day, an hour each way. But I was lucky in that I didn't live too far away from my local tube station. But had I been forced to add a few miles in a bus on top of that, it would have been intolerable. How people put up with that sort of thing now surprises me. But at least I could travel at will at the weekends in my car back then. But once you've been robbed of your cars, then that horrific daily commute will become the stuff of shopping, weekend trips to see the family, and going on holiday. But I take it from the Minister's words that that is exactly where we're being led, down the garden path to the bike shed. And that might explain why there's no answer when people ask how are those people who live in flats with no garage going to be able to charge their brand spanking new electric cars? Where are our charging points, they ask? Well, probably because you won't have your own electric car to charge. So what's your opinion on personal transport ownership? Please like and comment below. Please subscribe and like this video, buy a mug and support me on Patreon or PayPal, and thank you for watching.